What about something no other WildRift creator has ever done for you? 1 roll, 5 power picks, 5 broken builds. On top of that, extra info as to why these champions are so strong in the meta and everything you need to know to pilot them to the best level possible. So if you want more of these, make sure to comment, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for everything WildRift. Let's start with one of the most broken AD carries of this patch and ever since his buff, and it's Jhin. Contrary to public belief, we will not present you the lethality or armor pen Jhin, we'll go for the tank and normal crit Jhin. So for your very first item, you're going to start off with the Gluttonous Griefs. They'll provide you with AD and a lot of extra sustain, which will be really powerful once we take a look at the runes. For your other first item, or your real first item, you'll go for Immortal Shield Bow. It provides you with a good shield, gives you good stats, and scales 50 billion times better than Collector can ever do. After this, it's Infinity Edge for the maximum damage output, and then we want to go for Lord Dominic's Regards. With this, we already set up for success and can literally one-tap anything that goes in our way. It doesn't even matter that we're not really a lethality Jhin. And for our next item, here comes the real kicker. We want Bloodthirster, because we want as much sustain as possible to stay in fights and take over when anything happens to our team. And for your last item, it is going to be Guardian Angel, Spirit Visage, or sometimes even Riftmaker if you play into full tanks and somebody has like 700 armor and you need to deal damage to them. For your enchantments, it's going to be Stasis and obviously Quicksilver. Runes is First Strike for money printing, then Gathering Storm, Giant Slayer, Bloodline, and obviously Overgrowth because it's the best rune right now available in terms of scaling and making you even tankier. So why is this pick so powerful in the meta or generally as a champion? Jhin has a very good laning phase and is a brutal bully. Jhin has good setup in forms of utility so he can engage a fight or join into a fight without even being physically there, but just using his second ability and ultimate. On top of that, he's also a very good weak side by being able to place traps right in front of his tower so the enemy can't clear them, so even if they stack the wave into him trying to dive him, he instantly clears the wave by stacking up a few traps and then throwing the rest of his spells into this. And the longer the game goes, the more powerful Jhin becomes, and then you're in for a very bad time if you ever get into auto deck range of this champion. Our next champion is also quite the monster of a champion, and it's Ezreal. He is as well a very good weak side as well as a very good laner if played properly. He can shift in, he can shift out of crowd control, he can run you down, he can auto-take resets with his first ability, and he has a lot of damage that people will never expect him to have. For your items, you really want to rush Manamune as it's your best item that scales the fastest, and after this it's Gluttonous Griefs. Don't go for Lucidity Boots because they're literally worthless on your champion. Every single of your items will feature ability haste and therefore getting 30 extra doesn't do anything for you. On the flip side, losing 35 AD and Vamp if you're dealing magical and physical damage is quite the big loss you should never be willing to take. After this, it's Trinity Force or rather Jhin, then you would sit on the Jhin, go for Essence Reaver as it buffs your spells by 22.5% without even another crit item. Then you can finish the Trinity Force whenever you want, then go for Serilda and Riftmaker, then it's Stasis or Quicksilver as you see fit. The Sense Reaver will take care of your mana issues which you will have with the newer Manamune, and therefore you'll never run out of mana again while you're farming on the map. For runes, let's start with the minor ones first. It's Brutal, it's Giant Slayer, Bloodline and Overgrowth. For your main rune, you can differentiate between 3 different ideas. Conqueror is the easiest one to apply as it's always valuable and it's easy to maintain. Kraken is a very lane dominant and very lane heavy rune, and First Strike is the best scaling rune for you and how your champion works in the later stages of the game. The cooldown of it goes down from 20 to 13 seconds, and if you hit an enemy in the late game with level 3 of your ultimate, with your ultimate and First Strike being available, you'll take away a lot of enemy HP and gain a lot of extra gold, which starting mid-game is really going to ramp up and accelerate your build. So your champion has a decent laning phase if you're good enough, does a lot of poke damage, but sometimes lacks damage into tanks and really takes a lot of time to get them killed, especially depending on what kind of keystone you took. Our next champion doesn't really care what he's facing and he's very powerful regardless of what is happening. And the reason is the following. Corki has insane wave kill capabilities, has poke that is second to none, and is overall very powerful when it comes to dealing with champions as he's able to itemize into crit, which other champions like Ezreal cannot really do. Next it is, Ezreal's primary damage is still physical and only partially magic, and therefore itemizing against the Ezreal is substantially easier than itemizing into Corki. What's very similar to Ezreal though is your starting item, which is going to be Manamune as you want to stack it as fast as possible. After this, as you're doing mixed damage or magical damage standalone, you obviously want the Gluttonous Griefs. Big AD, big sustain. The next item is going to be a Sense Reaver. You want to really have your spells dealing extra damage and infinite sustain on the map, because you really want to farm with your spells to maximize your time on the map. After this, it's Infinity Edge for even more AD, and then only afterwards we go for Riftmaker. For your last item, most of the time, even though you don't really use the physical vamp at all, you'll go for lovely Shield Bow. The Shield Bow will grant you 100% crit rate, some attack speed, some AD, but most importantly, another shield that will keep you safe just in case you get all in. This build is not the tank Corki, it's the crit carry Corki. And the only thing it kind of lacks is attack speed. Similar to Ezreal, we can go with the following idea. Conqueror is the easiest to stack and maintain, and adds a lot of damage. First Strike, however, accelerates the gold gain we have, and therefore item spikes we can reach, and help us deal even more damage in the late game by just poking the enemy with the one single ability, the Red Rocket, which takes away 50% of the enemy's HP bar if they're squishy. Other runes, for example, in the main precision tree, can be Brutal for laning phase dominance, Giant Slayer to deal even more damage to enemies, Bloodline obviously, and after this it's Overgrowth. Alternatively, you can also go into the Resolve tree as your first tree and just go full defenses, which is Nullifying Orb, Bone Plating, and Overgrowth to make it even more impossible for the enemy to kill you. However, on the second tree, you basically have to stick with Giant Slayer and cannot really go into Bloodline, because it really sucks dealing 14% less damage to high priority targets, which you will face and may have trouble with killing. Coming next is the fan favorite Kai'Sa, a mid laner, even a Baron laner, and a Dragon laner, and sometimes even played in jungle even after a nerf. But for items, we want Manamune as the core item, then Boots of Mana, Nash's Tooth, to then go into Riftmaker, Rabadon's Death Cap, and Void Staff. For your enchantments, it's going to be Stasis or Quicksilver nearly 99.9% of the time, but now I'll tell you about why you want these items. After the change to Manamune, it now applies to spells and on hit effects. With that in mind, your spells deal a lot of extra damage as you're mainly going to poke the enemy with your second ability on cooldown. With this in mind, you can also think about substituting the Manamune for the Essence Reaver, but then you'd go into a more crit-like approach, and you'd have a delayed spike compared to Manamune because Manamune is so cheap. And now you need your first 3 items as fast as possible to gain access to all your evolves. Now going Boots of Mana into the Nash's Tooth then turns your damage into AP. You're not any longer AD, but your adaptive counts for AP. Then, as you go for other items, such as the Riftmaker and the Rabadons, into then the Void Staff, you'll have a lot of extra AP, which will amplify your damage even more. If you get to auto-attack quite frequently, the Nash's Tooth is going to absolutely ravage the enemy. And that's why you need to think about the following. If you can auto-attack frequently in a game, you obviously want to take a Lethal Tempo. But if you cannot auto-attack at all, then Lethal Tempo has little to no value and Conquer just becomes straight up better. But if you cannot auto-attack well anyway, why should you go for Nash's Tooth? Right? So just supplement this item with another AP item and go for the other items you would go for anyway. The same applies to your other runes. If you can auto-attack, go Brutal. If you can't, go Gathering Storm. Otherwise, it's Giant Slayer, Bloodline, and obviously Overgrowth because it makes you even tankier. And for our last broken champion and broken build, we have Varus. This is more of a new approach, which is kind of a hybrid champion. It's quite a lot of damage. In the early game, you'll be AD, similar to Kai'Sa, and then later on, as you have similar items to the Kai'Sa, you'll transition into AP, because AP just deals with every tank so much better. You just one-shot anyway. So for your first item, you want Manamune, then you want to go into Gluttonous Grease because they provide you with even more AD. After this, it's Nash's Tooth, and you are still AD at this point, and now, after completing the Riftmaker, you should transition into AP, and then your ultimate and all your passive stacks deal so much extra damage. And it only gets worse the moment you have Rabadon's Death Cap and Void Staff. And the only thing you're missing is survivability, which you'll get through Zhonya's, or rather Stasis, and QSS. For runes, you want First Strike because it's money printing, and we all love money printing on AD carries, Brutal if you want to auto-attack a lot during the laning phase, Giant Slayer, and obviously Bloodline. Next to this, it's Overgrowth because we want to stay healthy. However, if you believe that you're in a losing lane and can't really do anything and are afraid of getting dove on cooldown, just go Resolve First Tree. Having Nullifying Orb, having Bone Plating, and Overgrowth at the same time is quite wonderful to have on any champion. You literally don't die. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching the video, and by the way, we started our membership. You can become a member of the channel for as little as $1. So get yourself one, become a full clear enjoyer if you truly want to, or enjoy cat Instagram content of mine. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want more RiftGuides content, leave a like in the comments, comment, and come back for more. See you soon.